getting ready to have so much fun. Mama Vega is in the house. Oh my goodness, Charmene, come out here. I cannot wait to get to visit with you. And for the audience, hey, lady. And for the audience to get to meet you. I hope things have been going well. I loved the last time we had a little bit of time together. We're getting ready to find out about nutrition, and we talked about this a little bit earlier, a little different perspective coming here, but it's all about how we can use nutrition to manage our fear. She's going to talk to us a little bit about the brain gut connection and give us such great insight. And what in the world? And I am confused. What are stress reducing foods? I need to know what they are. Please share. Welcome. I'm so happy to see you.
I'm happy to be here. And first of all, I want to thank you for having me. That's the very first thing. And I just enjoyed all, and I mean all of the panelists, because I listened from the very first one until now, and they are just amazing with what they've had to share. All of us are like-minded. We just come from different aspects of the same thing. I like to start with what is fear? And fear is something, one person said, we're born, and when we come out crying because it's the unknown. So I
Yeah.
hear that. So that's true. And that's really what it is. It's the unknown. But most of the time, we don't turn it around to see, well, what if we don't tackle it? What's the downside if we don't move forward? We look at something that's paralyzing us. And I want to give something that I think many of us deal with before I get into the other aspect, and that is taxes.
Taxes, I don't like them.
Yeah. And we have a fear sometimes when we get that bill and it's like, oh, do I have enough money to pay for this? What am I going to do? I have all these other things, or you have an emergency that happened, and now the fear comes in that I can't afford this. How am I going to do this? We don't think that maybe we can call them up and say what the problem is. We
Mm.
don't even think about that in taking the action to hit that fear straight on, as someone else had mentioned. Sometimes that's what we have to do. But another thing that wasn't mentioned is the cultural aspect of fear.
Mm.
And fear has a cultural aspect. Many minority families in particular, it's what happens in the home stays in the home. So people are fearful of saying something to someone outside the home about needing some help.
Yes.
And so that becomes a real fear. Even though we say a fear, it's the fear of the unknown, it's the unknown, but it's an unknown reality. So it's kind of plays a double-edged sword on you, because I don't know what's going to happen if I do, but I'm fearful that what will happen if I do. So I don't know what will happen, but I'm fearful. And maybe I'm fearful from a cultural standpoint
Mm.
because I've been conditioned. Someone else mentioned societal, I believe it was Dubai, where she
Yeah.
meant where
Yes,
she mentioned,
Samantha.
right, where she mentioned the societal things and all these other things that are placed on us. And that's where the culture comes in.
Mm-hmm.
All these other things are placed on us, but people are not paying attention to what does that do to our being. When you're fearful of something, what does that do? Because it's changing your chemical makeup in your body, so that now what you have is you have anxiety, you have depression, you have stress, you have insomnia, you have all these other things that people don't realize, that it stems from the fear of moving forward. And so now what does that do? And when you mentioned the brain gut connection, that's where that goes, where people say, oh, I have butterflies in my stomach, right? That's because your brain and your stomach are communicating with one another. That's exactly what it is. There's an actual nerve that goes from the back of your head and it goes around your chest and down into your stomach. And your gut or in that area, it has more neurons and everything than is actually in your brain. So it's actually somewhat controlling you, which gets into what are the foods that you're eating. The foods that you're eating are now going into your brain, because when you're digesting food, it doesn't just stop at your neck. It's a whole circulatory system. And if you eat the wrong foods, now you get inflammation.
Mm.
That inflammation now is still causing things in your brain. So your brain is inflamed. Now you have brain fog. So you see how this goes? It creates this whole domino effect. And it's almost like you're on a hamster wheel. You don't even know how to get off. You're on,
Right.
and you just see, I'm going round and round and round, and how do I get off? And again, I'll go back to culture, but you can't say anything. So
Can't talk about it. You can't ask for help. That would be a betrayal or whatever that is. So you have to figure out how to get off the
and you're
hamster.
stuck, and you're stuck is what it is. And so sometimes people say, well, just go ahead and do it, just go ahead and move forward, but you don't realize that's almost like kryptonite, or it's like a magnet that's pulling you back the other way, because that's been so entrenched and so ingrained in you, and you're fearful of the repercussions. And if it's a cultural thing, and if it's a family thing, and you then go against the family of what they desire or what they say,
Right.
now you're on an island by yourself, because you haven't reached out to anybody to tell anybody. So if you leave the comfort of this thing that you're still ingrained in, and so now look at how that's impacting your health, which now causes diabetes. It causes, obesity. So you have diabetes, which is all they call diabetes, diabetes and obesity. Then you have anxiety, stress, depression. So what do you do? And that's where we have to keep educating people about food and showing people that if you're eating the right foods, that can help, especially if it's organic. I was talking to a friend earlier before I got on here, and he was talking about Diet Coke. And he was talking about how Diet Coke is really like a drug. He said,
Sure.
because, yeah, he said when he gets off of it, it's almost like for a couple of days, he's, he's up and down going to the bathroom 12 times, during the day, because he's stopped getting it. But it's like his body was retaining a lot of water because of the salt that's in it. Now,
Mm.
a few days later, so it takes him about 4 days to get used to not drinking that. And as soon as he stops drinking it, now he's super thirsty, because his body has gotten rid of all this water from all of the salt that it was retained. And he said, it's like a cycle. And he said, I know it's the chemicals that's in it, but we don't pay attention to what are those chemicals doing to us, especially things like Doritos and Cheetos. How many times do you just grab a bag of chips and you're like, okay, I'm just sitting here on the computer, I'm doing something, let me just grab this, right? But you don't know what that's actually doing to your brain, and you're not really getting any substance into your cells. And so you become in this cycle also, and it's called a pleasure trap. You feel
Sure.
good. You feel good at the moment, but what is it doing? It's really harming your body. It's harming everything. And when you have all of these things going on, and you have the anxiety, depression, what happens oftentimes with women in particular, they have hair loss, right? Your hair starts coming out because you're so stressed. That also means your body has a lot of DHT. So it's a dihydro, whatever it is.
Yeah, DHT.
DHT, right? And so, but that's elevated. And when that gets elevated, now you really can't think. So what do? There are some things you can do in order to reduce that, to try to help balance that, which is where what your question was, where it comes in with food. And you hear a lot about this, the prebiotics, the probiotics, the postbiotics, taking those. Something as simple as garlic and onion will help with prebiotics and probiotics, making sure you have a lot of that in your food. The
I
other thing,
love garlic and onions.
Yes, and for the DHT, you want to suppress that, which would be where you're doing saw palmetto. So saw palmetto, and I always like to do disclaimers and saying I'm not prescribing, I'm not doing anything of that nature, because it's not me being a doctor or anything like that. And so, but you can also do like olive oil. All of these things you hear about as far as fruits and vegetables and things of that nature are things that you can do. Olive oil, you can do flaxseed, you can do pumpkin seed. You'll love this one, dark chocolate.
Okay. I can't go. I have to tell you, I have a sweet tooth, especially for chocolate. So,
But
okay.
it's the dark chocolate and the
I
dark
know.
chocolate.
I
Yes, I
know. I'm a
know.
little disappointed in that information, but I
Yeah,
do.
I know. It's the dark chocolate because you want to get as high in the percentage of the cacao and lower in the sugar because that's what plays havoc on the brain. So you want to make sure you're doing that. Fatty fish will help if you want to do that. That will help, so you can
Okay.
get omegas with that. But you want to do the foods that are going to balance balance you. So broccoli, calming you down would be chamomile. You can do the matcha tea. I always tell people, even just walking, just going outside and walking in nature, taking your mind off of whatever it is that's really going on. Another thing, when I taught special ed, that one of the things I had my students to do is use the non-dominant hand.
What I did the other day, I decided I was going to brush my teeth with my left hand, and I
But
didn't do very
and if
well.
you, and if you do that, what happens is you have to focus on that. You can't be focusing on all this other stuff because you're trying to figure out so much. How am I going to do this and get around? Or if you're getting ready to write something, write with the non-dominant hand. Because now these things are forcing you not to think about those other negative things. If you're getting ready to walk, you normally take your right foot and walk first, take your left foot and walk first. So things that you would normally do with your dominant side, switch it up.
One of the things, and I think you and I spoke about this, I love yoga. And one of the
Yeah,
reasons I love it is because you always work opposing muscles. You would do one side, then you do the other side. And it really does. You do feel more balanced.
that's exactly right. And sometimes people just say sit and meditate, but if you are in a fear state, you have a hard time of sitting and meditating, which is why I try to give you activities to do that forces you to do something else. Even learning a craft like knitting, sewing, artwork, even if it's just drawing. And if somebody says, well, I just don't know what to do, go grab a rock and start drawing on a rock. You can grab anything, you can grab
Rock
anything.
art is kind of a big deal.
Yes. So, but do something that's out of the norm that you have to learn so that it's forcing you to have to do something else that you would normally not do. Um, Also detoxing. That's another thing, getting rid of all that stuff that's in you, which is all bad bacteria that's built up, which is also imparting on your brain. And detoxing is not just a regular detox, but you also want to make sure you might be getting rid of all the parasites in you because we have a lot of parasites that are naturally in us, but you can get rid of them. And, I do have that on my website where I do talk about parasites and I tell you about the parasites. And there's this little pill you can take. And what it does is it cleanses. And there's a YouTube I have on there where he tells you exactly the formula, what to do and how to do this to get rid of the parasites in your system. And it works. I don't have the bottle here in front of me, but I just got mine. so,
This
so
is wonderful. And oh my goodness, you are full of steps, literally activities, things that we can do, not just the foods that we eat,
right.
but I love using the other hand. I mean, I think that is such a great idea because it will interrupt these thoughts, right? You have to change your focus. That's so brilliant. And I'm sick about it. I'll tell you, never long enough to
I
visit.
know, I
But
know.
I want to make sure that the audience knows. I know the team is letting them know how to get in touch with you, but what I notice is you do have some QR codes up.
Yes.
And so please, audience, um, zoom in or zoom in. I don't think you even have to zoom, but if you go and hold your phone up, you'll be able to immediately go to her links. But the team has dropped and
Mhm.
make sure that you have access to these generous gifts that Mama Vega, who we just became fast friends from our very first
We
conversation.
did. We
And
did.
I just appreciate you being here so much. I have so many more questions, and I look forward to our next conversation. Thank you
Absolutely.
for participating. Thank you for what you offer. I love all the different perspectives. That's what it's all about, right?
It
And
is. And I do want to leave people with when they do these things, it does increase longevity. I just came from a longevity conference, and
hmm,
the takeaway there is make sure you get your sleep.
oh, stayed up too late last night. But that is, yes, sleep. We're going to have to do an entirely different summit show on sleep because
Sleep.
people are desperate for it.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I can't wait to talk again. Have a wonderful evening.
You too.